Ladies and gentlemen, without further ado, we're very happy to have with us for the second time. He has been with us before, and that is Dr. Wesley Muhammad. God bless you, my brother. Assalamu alaikum.
God bless you. Walaikum salam. It's an honor to be back on your wonderful show, beloved. Thank you for the invite.
Now, who is the original man? Now, that's on page 24 in the current final call. And naturally, that attracts the attention of those brothers and sisters who are familiar with the lessons of the Nation of Islam. And it was, let me see what he's going to add to the mix. And you bring up a very, very interesting account of a brother, gentleman, a spiritual person in India. And there's also the fact of Dr. Akif from... thank you, brother, because you know I was going to go ham and eggs and all this other kind of stuff on the man's where he's from, you know. So my brother, how did you come on to discovering that piece of history that relates the encounter between the Hindu and the Muslim in India? And I'm jumping ahead, but just give us the genesis, the beginning of how you came to do this article, which is a very valuable one for the entire audience.
Yes, sir. Thank you, beloved. The article is actually the first installment in a regular column. The column is entitled, Who is the Original Man?
Okay.
That was the first article.
Okay.
And the genesis of it is a discussion that I had with my spiritual father and yours, the Honorable Brother Minister Louis Farrakhan.
Yes, sir.
He had mentioned to me in discussing my relocation to Chicago that after reading some of my work, he had reflected on something the Honorable Elijah Muhammad had said. He had said that 40 years later, reflecting on student enrollment number 1, who was the original man, he said if he could write or answer that question again, he could write volumes. And the minister shared that with me in terms of the volumes I have been writing on the Black God, on who is the original man. And so I asked him from that, well, can I provide some of those volumes that maybe that I believe the Honorable Elijah Muhammad and Allah is inspiring us, is uncovering for us today. He's uncovering those volumes for us. And whether, even if he doesn't pen the volumes, those of us who study him and follow him and whom Allah inspires to write in his name, where those volumes are being written. So he approved for me to write the column, Who is the Original Man, and provide some of the volumes, the academic volumes, the volumes of Vindication for the Honorable Elijah Muhammad's answer to the question, who is the original man? And, of course, the answer is the original man is the Asiatic black man, the maker, the owner, the cream of the planet Earth, God of the universe. So the column, Who is the Original Man, is a regular series in which I will, Allah willing, provide vindicating material, piecing apart that answer and providing the tons and tons and tons and volumes of material that's out there and is available to us now to demonstrate the absolute correctness
Dr. Muhammad,
supreme wisdom. Yes, sir.
Dr. Muhammad, you use the term vindication. You don't use the term validation.
Well, either one can be used.
Okay, good enough.
I use vindication because vindication has a connotation that validation doesn't necessarily have.
Yes.
Or vindication has an emphasis that validation doesn't normally have. Vindication comes to something after it has been derided, after it has been dismissed.
Yes, sir.
Vindication speaks to a circumstance of controversy,
Gotcha.
whereas validation doesn't necessarily.
Got it.
And vindication is my preferred word because this teaching of Honorable Elijah Muhammad has been and remains controversial. It has been dismissed. It has been mocked. And so I use vindication because the material available to us, the volumes of material, the tons of data available to us, validates and thus vindicates the teachings of the Honorable Elijah Muhammad.
Beautiful. Now share with us the story that is central to this.
Yes, sir. Well, the Honorable Elijah Muhammad's key teaching to us is that the black man is God. That God of the scripture in particular is a man, a black man. That Allah, the God of the Quran, is a black God, a black man. The Muslim world dismisses this teaching, angrily dismisses it, and the best they can offer the Honorable Elijah Muhammad in this regard is that while he grossly misinterprets the Quran, that he imposes a black ideology on the Quran, that this black ideology is born from his racial context, that his black nationalist social upliftment program necessitated this particular reading of the Quran. And so they dismiss it as his social, racial ideology imposed on the Quran. The central figure of this article in the final call, Sri Chaitanya, who was a 16th century Hindu scholar turned Hindu saint and mystic, who was the center of a phenomenal devotional revivalist movement of the 16th century, and will become one of the most important religious figures in the history of the subcontinent of India. 400 years prior to the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, he read the Quran in the exact same way. He was a Hindu scholar that also, because he came up in the context of the Muslim rule in East India, Bengal, the country of Bengal, West Bengal in particular, which is in the northeast corner of the Indian subcontinent. During his day, and for a while before and after it, Bengal was ruled by Muslims, largely Turkish Muslims, but during his day, an Arab dynasty of Muslims. So he came up in a Muslim context and became very learned in Muslim tradition. He became learned in Hadith. He became learned in Quran. And he, being learned in both Hindu tradition, the scriptures of Hinduism, and learned in the scriptures of Islam, this became partly the basis of his devotional movement. And he oftentimes had documented discussion with the Muslims of his day, most of whom were Sufis. Sufism really introduced Islam into West Bengal. And his discussions with Muslim scholars of that area, we are fortunate enough to be privy to those discussions, the debates he had with Hindu and Muslim scholars. The particular discussion that is the focus of my article is the exchange he had with a Muslim scholar, a Sufi saint, and 10 of that Muslim saint's comrades. And the discussion, the debate was over the nature of God. The Sufis at that time, the Muslims at that time, had Hellenized. They've accepted what the Honorable Elijah Muhammad called the spook God. They accepted the formless God of Greek philosophy that by the 16th century would choke out the God of Muhammad in Islam as it choked out the God of the Bible in Judaism and Christianity. Sri Chaitanya served notice on those Muslims and demonstrated in that debate that they are wrong, that the God of the Quran, in fact, is not a spook God, but is not only a God who is a divine man, a divine person with a body, but that his body is black. So 400 years prior to the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, the most important religious movement in India centered on a recognition not only that God is a man, but God is a black man, and its leader was able to demonstrate and convince Muslims of the area that the God of the Quran is black, is a black man. Now, Sri Chaitanya was a Brahmin, a very light-skinned Brahmin, Indian Brahmin. This was no black power movement. So this doctrine, this reading of the Quran, wherein one finds the black God there, cannot be dismissed as a black ideology being imposed on the Quran, because there was nothing black about Sri Chaitanya. There was nothing black about the movement that he spearheaded at the time, except the God, except its God. So that's the focus, and what my intent with this article is to serve notice on all of those who would dismiss the Honorable Elijah Muhammad's reading of the Quran as his own Negro reading, his own racializing of the Quran in the context of a Black American social reform movement.
Now, when you, going back, Sri in his debate with this Arab.
Yes, sir.
Because
actually, he wasn't an Arab. He was a Pashtun.
Go ahead.
Pashtun is a white ethnic group, Iranian ethnic group, Indo-Iranian ethnic group. The Taliban, for example, are Pashtun.
Okay. That's a group of individuals over there. We've been so politicized over here. We think that Taliban is a political group.
Right,
when it's really a group of people.
Well, the Taliban is a group, but the Taliban, the members that belong to the Taliban movement, their ethnic background are Pashtun.
Okay, good.
They belong to the Pashtun ethnic group, and the Pashtun ethnic group is an Indo-Aryan ethnic group, a white ethnic group. Which makes this story more important because nobody's black in this scenario. These are very white Muslims having this exchange with a white Brahmin, and the white Brahmin is showing them that the God of the Quran is a black man, and these white Pashtuns, these white Muslims, accept it. Now, who is Arab at the time of this discussion is the king of Bengal. He's an Arab Sayyid. It was an Arab dynasty at that time, Hussein Shah. And Hussein Shah, the Arab in this story, supported Sri's movement with this black God. So we have white Brahmin, white Pashtun Muslims, and Arab Muslims. And at this moment in time, 400 years before the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, accepting the fact that the God of the Quran is a black man.
And you made a point of, you said before the Arabs had become Hellenized. Break that one out.
Yes, sir.
That's Hellenized as in Greek, Hellenic culture.
Greek philosophy.
Go ahead.
By Hellenized, they've accepted. By Hellenized, I mean they accepted and integrated into their theology the formless God of Greek philosophy. The God of the Prophet Muhammad was not a formless God. The God of that Arab prophet Muhammad and the largely Arab community of Islam that he rose was the God of all Scripture, which in every case is a man God. The Bible is very explicit. The Bible calls God, the one God, a man, Ish in Hebrew or Gibor in Hebrew. In the Greek New Testament, Jesus himself referred to God as a man, anthropos. And the Prophet Muhammad himself, peace be upon him, also referred to his God, described his God as a man, a shaks, a divine man. This God did not last in Islam. When the Prophet's community was usurped by non-Arabs, they imported into Islam their belief system. They imported into Islam their God, the God that they got from the Greek philosophers. So the God of Muhammad, that man God, that shocks, was replaced in Islam by the God of Greek philosophy or Hellenism, that spook God that Honorable Elijah Muhammad called, that formless God. So by the 16th century, most of the Muslim world had accepted this formless God because the party that introduced this Greek God into Islam would grow to become dominant in Islam.
I want to shift for the moment and go to the power of the teaching or the lesson, who is the original man? A lesson that Malcolm accepted and operated off of. And I want, from your perspective, and this relates to how it's been, they say, but that's, that was Elijah Muhammad's own technology to get black people to think that they're better than the state of mind that they were put in.
Right.
Okay? That's the dismissal. What is the power in that lesson? I mean, from your perspective.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir. Who is the original man and the answer?
Yes, sir. Praise belongs to Allah. Good, wonderful question. First, we have to understand that those pyramids in the sands of Egypt that all of us marvel at, that civilization of ancient Egypt that lasted longer than any civilization in recorded and recordable history and produced the greatest, most mysterious scientific monuments in the world, that civilization was built on the exact same understanding of God that Honorable Elijah Muhammad gave us. That is to say, those pyramids raised in the sands of Egypt were raised by people who were absolutely convicted in the fact that the God to whom they are raising those phenomenal structures was a black man. All of our ancient civilizations that we marvel at, whether it not just Egypt, but Indus Valley civilization over in ancient India, Sumerian civilization, just to name those most widely known and ancient, all of them were anchored in the conviction that God not only is a man, but is a black man. So that shows us what black people can do when we have the proper knowledge of God. And when you contrast that with our current state and our inability, what we have produced when we've labored under the mistaken belief that God is other than a man, you cannot show the type of civilization building from us when we have labored under the belief that God is other than a man. So here, the Honorable Elijah Muhammad actually raised a pyramid in the sands of America. what he did with the so-called Negro in America is greater than what the Egyptians did with that brick in the sands of Egypt. He was able to take a totally dead people and transform them into a beacon of cultural, intellectual light for the world. Malcolm epitomizes that transformation. He is the most popular, most widely known success story, but the fact of the matter is the transformation exemplified by Malcolm repeated itself time and time again. This is what Malcolm is, the tip of the pyramid that was built in the sands of America by the Honorable Elijah Muhammad with this teaching that not only is God a man, but the black man is God.
There is in your statement, transform a dead people. When I came into contact with the Honorable Elijah Muhammad's teachings, I was confused by his designation of the so-called Negro in America as blind, deaf, and dumb. I actually went out looking. I wasn't no child. I'm an adult. I went out looking for. I said, "What? I don't see that many blind people. What is he talking about?" You used the term "dead people." You're a scholar. You're a PhD, and what is the justification for using a dead people, transform a dead people? Malcolm was alive. He's a live individual. What do you mean, dead people?
Well, Malcolm was alive, depending on what definition of living and dead one uses. Now, we have always understood that truth operates on three levels: physical, spiritual, and mental. We understood that in all of our wisdom systems of the ancient world. And we understand that in the Nation of Islam. Dead and resurrection, as used in Scripture, 9 times out of 10 always means not a physical death, but a mental and a spiritual state of a people whose heart beat and have a pulse, but they are spiritually and mentally dead. They are spiritually and mentally unproductive. So dead is to be understood in its spiritual and mental context. Now, once, and we also understood that when something is true on one level, eventually it becomes true on all three levels. So our spiritual and psychological and mental death is always followed eventually by physical death. And so look at our community, beloved. Death is a cloud that thunderstorms over our community. Chicago is just one example of a city, a black area in which clouds of death reign. We die of all manner. We die of violence. We die of diet. I just buried my brother-in-law less than a year ago, 35 years old, died of a heart attack, 35 years old. Black folks are dying. 99 ways to die. We are dying through all of them. So that's the natural consequence of the spiritual and mental death. So we are a dead people. And so resurrection is first a spiritual resurrection, a mental resurrection. And this will allow us to avoid the death traps, the many death traps that this world has put in our path to physically kill us.
When your mental eyes are open, avoiding the death traps.
Yes, sir.
That's what you're saying.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And we're going to pause for station identification. Ladies and gentlemen, this is the Communicators coming to you over Harlem Community Radio, and it is
WHCR 90.3 FM, New York.
Our guest online is Dr. Wesley Muhammad. I'm Brother Leroy in studio, Brother Sinke in studio. Dr. Wesley Muhammad is an historian of religion who earned a bachelor's degree in 1994 in religious studies from Morehouse College and a master's degree in 2003 and a doctorate in 2008 in Islamic studies from the University of Michigan. And he has a column in the current issue of the Final Call newspapers on page 24, Who is the Original Man? We're talking about how that article came about, because within the structure of the Nation of Islam, this is one of the first lessons that you get, who is the original man. And it has a certain power, a transformative power, as we are touching on, that there's something that happens, Dr. Wesley, in terms of behavior. Oh, I'm sorry. Brother Sinke is saying that the phone is off the hook in back of me. So we go take a caller two.
Yes,
Ladies,
sir. Yes,
brothers,
sir.
and sisters, go right to your question. God bless you. Thank you for your call. You're on the Black Air.
Assalamu alaikum, my brother.
Wa alaikum salam.
Wa alaikum salam.
Right on. As you mentioned, the darkness comprehension is not the light. And I would like to know if you feel as though one of the first phases of resurrection, is, this is how I feel, is to not speak about the Christ and Jesus in the past tense term. In other words, he already mentioned that he will be with us even until the end of the world. And I feel as though he came down off the cross. He's not on the cross anymore. And for those who holding him on the cross is living in the past, they're putting him and turn in that sense themselves. I really feel as though, he's alive. Of Christ is before 2,000 years. This is before the world, and it will be, if you want. So if you understand where I'm coming from, do you feel that it'll be one phase of resurrection is taking Jesus from the cross and making him alive, and not speaking about him in his past tense?
You got that, Doc, or does he need to rephrase?
I think so. Do I believe that one of the first things we need to do in facilitating this resurrection process among our people is to teach them about Christ being taken down from the cross? Actually, no, I do not. Unless we help them understand that Christ is them. I think the first step, the first thing we should teach our people about is not necessarily a man. That man being Master Farad Muhammad, that man being Honorable Elijah Muhammad, that man being Jesus or Muhammad. In my opinion, the first thing to teach our people to facilitate this resurrection process is to teach them, about that individual. Because in Black America, in the very depressed, war-torn communities where people are suffering, for me, they want to know how they can better their life. And I think the first lesson is to teach them that they are God. Not teach them that the Honorable Elijah Muhammad is the Christ, but to teach them that they are God. We got to get our people to first look at self and develop self, because self-improvement is the basis of community development. So for me, the teaching of who the Honorable Elijah Muhammad is in his full dimension is a secondary teaching. What's most important is to teach them who they are. And so when they ask, where did you get this, that the black man is God? After we've convinced them of that, then we tell them. where we got it from, the source, and how it is that this man could teach us that when no one else in this country, in the history of this country, taught us that. So I do believe that lesson is a critical part of the overall resurrection process. I do not believe we should lead with that in getting our people. Self-knowledge first. And by self-knowledge, that means that individual, teach that individual who that individual is and what that individual is capable of as God.
Beautiful. Telephone number 212-650-6903. You'll be on the air with Dr. Wesley Muhammad. He has a full-page article, column, in the current issue of the Final Call newspaper, and that is the issue that says, can violence, I'm sorry. No, I gave him the wrong paper. I gave my brother the wrong paper. I have paper in my hand, Brother Wesley, and a whole bag full of papers. I pulled out the wrong paper. Hold on a second.
All of them are valuable.
Major tragedy in a small town. That's the headline of the paper, and you'll see President Obama wiping away a tear in the middle picture. December 25th is the issue. At any rate, page 24 in this issue, he has a page on the original man. Now, in the article, you mentioned, I'm not going to go to the brother. Wait a minute, the scholar who uncovered the background to that. Yes. Now, what you must do is define tafsir.
Tafsir, yes, sir. Yes, sir. Tafsir is an Arabic term that, broadly speaking, means interpretation of the Quran.
Okay.
In a technical sense, it's a technical study, a technical way, specialized way of interpretation. You had trained expert in tafsir in the classical period. So you have commentaries on the Quran done by scholars in this branch of Quranic studies called tafsir or Quranic exegesis.
Got it. Okay.
Dr. Wesley, I wanted you to clarify something earlier. There was what Brother Leroy said, we were talking about mental versus spiritual rejuvenation or rebirth. I mean, what is the difference between the mental and the spiritual? How do you separate these two?
Yes, sir. It's hard, but it's necessary because they are distinct. The spiritual resurrection, the Honorable Elijah Muhammad compared us. He said, we are gods, but we lost our power. And so we're like salt that lost its savor. And it, therefore, has no power, has no relevance. It's dead. As gods, the Bible says this, very importantly. Psalms. Ye are gods, all of you children of the Most High God, but then it says something critical. But ye shall, you shall die like mortals. What that means is these gods will lose their godly power, their immortality, which doesn't mean necessarily live forever, because none of the gods live forever. But they will lose their spiritual power, will be divested of them. And that's what happens when the God dies. She loses her spiritual power. And so the spiritual death is evidence in our inability to lift above this very mundane world, lift above. We have no power other than very mundane powers. But when we say God is a man, we don't mean to denude God of his godly powers. No, he's a man with power, the power that a God should have. We don't have that as a symptom of our spiritual death. That's different from, that's not necessarily the same thing as a mental death. We can come alive mentally while we're still in the process, on the journey of coming alive spiritually. We're alive mentally when we're able to see truth and recognize truth. So we in the Nation of Islam, ideally, being that we know who the original man is, being that we know who God is, theoretically, we should be alive mentally, but we're still on the journey to becoming alive spiritually.
Dr. Wesley, let me run this back by you, what you just laid. I'm going to run it back to you.
Yes, sir.
That the mental, the word hits the mind.
Yes, sir.
The mind, you begin to roll that bad boy around, and you begin to grasp, and you begin to gain more knowledge. Now, as you gain more knowledge in this area, the awakening of the mind, you begin to take on certain habits, your behavior change. You take on certain habits such as fasting, such as prayer, such as being clean, such as doing good works, and those events lead to a spiritual acquisition.
Bingo. Absolutely.
Telephone number
Those
21.
facilitate the spiritual resurrection.
Because
they are absolutely necessary for the spiritual resurrection.
Yes. That's the preliminary. That's that separation thing where when we revert and stop doing those things that were pillars to our success, then we lose those spiritual powers. As you said in the Psalms, we become as mortal. We began to eat scavenger. We began to be loose, etc.
Absolutely. And let's make it real simple and direct for those who may need it a little more simply. If we aren't fasting, we just came through our first reinstituting of our monthly fast, our national fast. If we don't fast, we will never be gods, true and living gods, period. Fasting and diet control is what we call sine qua non. It's absolutely non-negotiable in the path towards spiritual resurrection. So if we avoid fasting, if we avoid the diet given to us by the Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad, then we will never achieve that spiritual resurrection.
I just need you to repeat that. You said the sine qua non, the
sine qua non, SINEQUANON. I love that word. I zap my students with it every year. And I write it down and I invite them to zap their friends with it. Sine qua non. That without which is none. That is to say, a sine qua non is that thing that without it, something couldn't be what it is.
Got you.
Sine qua non is that thing which is most non-negotiable. You can't get rid of it unless you get rid of the whole thing. And fasting is sine qua non. Diet control is sine qua non to our spiritual journey. If we avoid fasting, if we avoid conforming our diet to that which God prescribed in how to eat to live, then we will never achieve spiritual resurrection, which means we never have the power of God.
Hold on, Doc.
God in word, but not God in deed.
Hold on, Doc. I'm going to have you go black over that after this call. God bless you. Thank you for your call. You're on the Black Air.
Yeah, salam alaikum, Dr. Wesley. Brother Ali Rahman.
Wa alaikum salam, beloved. How are you?
Oh, I'm excellent now, much better now. You really cleared up a lot of technology for everybody across the land and across the world. But here's my question. You said things like dead issues. What are those dead issues that our people should be looking for to help up our mind and resurrect our mind?
Dead issues?
Brother Ali?
Yes?
No, he wanted you to repeat your question.
He was talking about the mentally dead and how we could revive our people out of this dead state of mind that we're living in right today.
Yes, sir. Yes,
okay. All right. He'll answer.
Hope I cleared it up.
All right.
The first dead issue, which is what we're talking about today, is the mystery God, the spook God. That is the chief stone the headstone on the grave of black people that keeps black people in the mental grave. This belief that God is other than a man. This belief that God is a spook. I mentioned earlier that we can't find the amazing civilizational contributions such as we made in Egypt, Sumer, Indus Valley, which we made under the tutelage of the black man God. We don't see similar success, civilizational success, when our people labored under the mistaken belief that God is a spook, God is a formless spirit. That is the headstone upon our mental grave. So the first thing we must do is identify it as such and destroy that headstone, destroy the myth of the spook God in the mind and belief system of black people. Until we remove that headstone, black people cannot make progress mentally, spiritually, or physically.
Mm. Telephone number 212-650-6903. God bless you. Thank you for your call. You're on the Black Air. You're on the Black Air. 212-650-6903. The belief in a mystery God, in a spook God, cuts off our connection with our own self, our own
Absolutely.
possibilities and capabilities.
Absolutely.
Hold on. God bless you. Thank you for your call. You're on the Black Air.
God bless you.
Yes,
My
sir.
question for the doctor is, there's a brother, I forget where he lives in this country of the United States, named Ray Hagan. He put out a tape called Christianity and Islam, Our Division and Strategy. Could Mr. Dr. Muhammad, can you address that? Is religion our problem, either Christianity or Islam, but mainly Islam because that's your forte? He's saying that that's like a hook in our leg or something. What's the story with that?
Well, I would answer yes and no. That depends on what Dr. Ray Hagan's meant by religion, meant by Christianity and Islam. Now, I have not had the benefit of watching that particular lecture. I don't know if you know, Brother Dr. Ray Hagan and myself, we debated the issue of Islam in New York. You can view that debate in its entirety on my YouTube page, Wesley Muhammad. We debated the issue of Islam as an African religion. Mm-hmm. And Dr. Ray, at that debate, conceded to everything that I presented. Mm-hmm. He showed great integrity there. Mm-hmm. Now, religion absolutely is the chief divider of our people. And religion done wrong creates mischief and mess. It should be done away with. Whether you call that wrong practice of religion, Islam or Christianity, it makes no difference. Religion done wrong is bad for black people. Religion done right is necessary for black people. You see, religion isn't what we profess, it's what we practice. So I can't comment on Dr. Ray's lecture specifically because I have not watched it. I don't know the context in which he was speaking when he used the term religion. I don't know the context in which he was speaking.
Okay.
When he's describing or talking about Islam or Christianity.
Just hold on, my brother. God bless you. Thank you for your call. You're on the Black Air.
Hey, Brother Leroy, how are you?
Excellent. And yourself?
Okay. Yeah, I'm excellent, brother. I'll be real quick.
Good.
Brother Muhammad, I'm not probably as wise and educated as you, brother, but my question to you, I understand you say it's a black man, the original man. Well, I just want to say this before I ask my question. First of all, I believe that it's a black woman. I believe we all come from the goddess, and there's no proof that a man could personally bring forth a woman. All the stuff about Egypt and all the stuff about religion is phony. Religion should not be adhered to. We should be in a spiritual base, and we should still understand that there's more out there that we don't understand. Hotep, reinstate automatic, be well.
Okay. All right. God bless you. Okay,
God
Doc.
bless you. First, I couldn't hear that last part about what you were saying about Egypt and what it was or was not. I believe I heard your first part, that the original man was a woman, that the goddess was the first.
Mm-hmm.
And I find it curious, if I heard your last statement correctly, that you dismiss religion, but then you invoke the goddess, as if the goddess is a non-religious concept. I'm a historian of religion first. So let's clear up that mistaken belief, that non-historical belief, the claim that the ancient world worshipped a woman as a paramount or supreme deity to the exclusion of the man, God, that is absolutely fictitious, fallacious. On my Facebook page, Wesley Muhammad, in my notes, I have a detailed discussion about that very issue. Was the first God a black woman? That is very inspiring to us here in a excessively, savagely patriarchal world. It's feel-good religion, but it's not actual fact. The fact of the matter is, as I demonstrated, all across our black world, we always recognize the black God and the black goddess, and the black God was always the paramount or supreme deity in that ditheistic relationship, meaning two-God relationship. So that's historical fact. Now, the claim that the woman can produce a man, but the man can't produce a woman. Well, one, when we talk about Lucy, I don't know why we assume that Lucy didn't have a man. During the time of Lucy, and prior to the time of Lucy, we have male bones, mitochondrial DNA, because it only is transmitted through the woman, will always only take us back to a woman. But that doesn't in any way suggest that that woman existed by herself, nor does it suggest that she suggested in an Amazon colony that did not know or value men. The genetic parallel to mitochondrial DNA is the non-recombining Y chromosomes. And scientists, just like they trace global maternity through mitochondrial DNA back to a mother, they can trace global paternity through non-combining Y chromosomes. So none of the mitochondrial Eve, there is nothing to suggest that she didn't have a man. Assuming that, reading that into the science only shows a lack of understanding of the science. And the last point, I would say this. I always, in all of the religions, our religions, we made it clear that God, that first being, was a being from which everything else in creation derived. He didn't just spook it into being. It all derived from his own being, his own essence. So if we want to know, have information about that original being, if that original being exists on the earth today, it will be a being that has within its genetic makeup the capability of producing everything else. So, for example, we know white folks could not have been the first people on existence. Why do we know that? Because we know that they are, in their original form, what's called homozygous recessive. All they have are recessive genes. And Gregor Mendel told us that you can get the recessive from the dominant, but you can't get the dominant from the recessive. So if recessive white folks were the first being, then none of the black folks, none of the darker folks who are dominant genetically could come about. We know that the black man has both the dominant and recessive. So as far as people go, all of the human family can be derived from the black man, but the black man cannot be derived from any of them. So we know the black man was the first group of people. Now, within the man, there's the X and the Y chromosome. And with that, the man can produce both a woman child or a man child. The woman only has the X chromosome. So if she was the first one, if she was that primordial being, then a man couldn't derive from her. But in the genetic makeup of the man, and by this I mean the male, who has both the X and the Y, like he has the dominant and the recessive, he can produce both male and female. So I don't know any good science that your statement can be based on, that you can get a man from a woman, but you can't get a woman from a man. I don't know of a time or a person who didn't derive from both male and female, except that first being, but that first being had to have the capability to produce both, and that would be the man.
Dr. Wesley Muhammad, if I was on the corner, I'd say, dang. But I ain't on the corner. So.
Praise belongs to Allah.
Listen, we at the black end of a very black discussion. And for those who have ears here, and we can't take any more calls, brothers and sisters. The brothers were calling in. I guess the sisters were waiting in the cut. Maybe they was calling on this one, but we can't take any more calls. We're at the black end. Dr. Wesley Muhammad, give your websites and your email address. Even though it's at the end of the article and people pick up the paper, they can read some of what we were discussing and get your connect. But what is your Facebook page?
Yes, sir. Thank you, Brother Leroy. My Facebook page is Wesley Muhammad. I also have a website, drwesleymuhammad.com. That's drwesleymuhammad.com. And I can be reached at drwesleymuhammad@gmail.
I want to thank Brother Elijah for setting up this interview, which is the second of a series that we, the good Lord willing, will have with you. And my brother, I want to thank you very much for taking out your time for your
thank you, Brother Leroy. I enjoyed the show as I did the last time. It's a wonderful show.
All praise is due to Allah. God bless you, my brother, and your family.
God bless you.
Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum salam.
Ladies and gentlemen, we are at the black end. I want to thank you all. On the tomorrow morning, we're going to have a very exciting program on Respect for Life. We come on, good Lord willing, we'll be on at 9 a.m. tomorrow morning right here on WHCR. Christmas night, we're on blogtalkradio.com/The Keys, KEYS 107. That's the numeral 107. And we're on from 7 to 9 on Blog Talk Radio. Blog Talk Radio /The Keys 107. That's the numeral 107. We have a excellent program planned for you, and Saturday night we're on Blog Talk Radio, same time, same configuration at 7 p.m. And the good Lord willing, we'll be back. Next Saturday on Blog Talk Radio, we'll be talking about the paper, The City Sun. There's a book that's been written on the City Sun and the history of the City Sun. It's important, and those of you who don't know about the City Sun, that was the leading paper at one time. Also, pick up the Black Star News, which has an article on the Moors. The brothers, you heard them only on this station and this program, the brothers who were fired by Bernard Kerik, the illustrious commissioner of police under the great mayor of the USA, Mayor Ugly Giuliani, cross-dressing Giuliani. And don't take offense. They got him in a dress and a wig and lipstick and everything else. They don't show it often, but they need to. God bless you all with a wonderful and a safe holiday. Remember, don't eat no swine.
Listen to the smooth, silky sounds of the Soul Lounge experience with your host, DJ Leroy.